Today we are in Smart OSC headquarters with a very special guest who has flown all the way over from Australia to be with us, Florian Pasquier, otherwise known as Flo. Flo is the CTO of Carma, a fully digital, pre-owned car dealership that has pretty much taken 2 steps ahead of everyone else. Carma offers a huge range of pre-owned cars delivered straight to your home with no question asked returns. Flo has been the CTO there, but before that, his journey has been super interesting. He's been a software developer, an engineer, a business owner. I'm so excited to chop into his career journey with you. Please join me in welcoming Flo to the Cut the Onion podcast. Flo, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Flo, to get us started, would you mind walking us through a day in the life of a CTO at Carma?
I think it's very important for us to acknowledge that the role of a CTO follows the life cycle of an organization, right? So as a startup, when you start basically working, you probably are acting as an engineer, then you progressively move up to an architect, then you become a team leader, then potentially a board member, and all of that essentially depends on where your company is at. So where we are at the moment at Carma, essentially a team of 15 engineers, I think my day is split across a few activities. One is around delivery focused, so making sure that the team is working on the right thing, following the right architecture pattern, supporting them throughout the day to make sure that all the hygiene stuff on engineering and delivery are being followed. But as well as the team grows and the practice becomes more and more mature, we need to start spending a lot of time in practice enablement. So things like automation, DevOps, continuous improvement, making sure that these things are being prioritized, being thought through, takes a bit of my time as well. Finally, I'm still hands-on, and there's a bit of a gap in the practice at the moment, and I'm feeling like the role of a data and machine learning engineer. Right?
Wow!
This is my craft from the beginning, so that's what I brought as like a special expertise trick at Carma. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
That's
a bit
so
of that
cool.
as well.
It's like you're everywhere all at once as well, but it's brilliant to see being in those different facets of the business and getting to work with all different kinds of people in different areas.
To some extent, you have to do it. Like the ability to turn ideas into values is pivotal for an organization at such early stage. So you don't necessarily have the time to go to market or hire a consultant. There's a lot of things that you have to figure out yourself. And the more you can see and build the capability as a Swiss army for the business, including yourself, the best it is.
Yeah, that's great. I want to go back a bit because you spoke about, some of your roots there where you were before Carma.
Yeah.
I'm looking at ETP data systems back in 2010 to where you are now with Carma. What have been some of the changes that you've seen maybe yourself as well for your own role, but also the CTO role itself since then?
I think everything has changed. Like the spectrum of technology and technology applications in the industry has shifted massively in diversity and complexity. Like think about data platforms, big data, cloud. All of these things have radically changed the tapestry of our craft. Like the way we do engineering, it's totally different. And then on top of all this new range of technology assets and platforms, a new emerging set of fields have been created, an expertise set such as DevOps, CloudOps, SecOps. All of these things now needs to be part of the toolbox of a CTO. Therefore, the role is way more, I think, complicated in the sense that you need to think about each of those aspects at the right time, at the right level of depth, and you need to think about all of these things strategically. When you build a stack, the amount of data points that you need to collect is massive. Like the way things have to be layered and built requires so much knowledge that it's very hard for one human brain to have all of those insights. So being able to source information, source expertise, outsource certain things becomes actually paramount for a CTO.
Wow. And even that, what you've said there about the complexity that happens and that rapid change that is continuous, it's almost like what you know now may not even exist in a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, too.
That's where I would like to nuance maybe a bit what I said. So
Yeah.
yes, the technology spectrum has changed massively and will continue to evolve very rapidly. See like the rise of generative AI and the absolute mayhem it creates in the industry. This will keep changing. However, there are still some fundamentals that are stable around how you build quality as an engineering team. What is a good code base, how to structure your teams. All of these fundamentals are there. You need to learn them rapidly in your career so that you can leverage these things. And that's those stable foundation that allow you really to navigate that complex change.
It's beautiful. And I want to get into your teams and how you navigate that with big projects in a little bit. But going to the next layer of an onion, this is normally the part where you cut into it straight away and the tears start to emerge. And I want to know, what is making you cry in the industry today? Any processes or things that are happening out there that frustrate you in your role as a CTO?
I think there are many things. But if we anchor that conversation around the industry itself, I think as a side effect of that Cambrian explosion of complexity in the field is the accumulation of SaaS platforms that you have to juggle on a day-to-day basis to realize your job. As a young organization, as a startup, essentially, you can't build everything. You have to essentially focus on your differentiation, what actually really is important for your business, and making sure that you generate IP around these things.
Yes.
All the rest, you outsource into SaaS platforms. That's almost how you have to be in business in that early stage. And that actually creates so much risk, like data proliferation, access control. Security, I think, is probably what really keeps me up at night, more than actually building value for the business. Making sure that all of these identity islands, all of that data stays secure for our customer, making sure that even though we don't have millions to spend in security, we still manage that risk profile appropriately. All of that, I think, is the really like heartbeat of my role at the moment, making sure that I maintain that tension constantly around the risk that we generate as a business and the investment to mitigate that risk. That is essentially what frustration is probably a strong word, but that's what definitely makes my laugh hard.
Yeah. Like what you said, keep me up at night, which is something that a lot of people relate to.
It does, yeah.
So to balance that out with some tears of joy, what trends or technologies are really exciting you in your space, in your industry?
So I swore before that interview that I wouldn't mention once AI. I've already done it. So let's try to move on from that. Because I think there's excitement and fear in that space, which is very interesting to unpack. However, since I took the role at Carma, what I think really excited me is the pace at which a small team can absolutely build awesome, strong technology muscle and deliver value at scale for a business. When you think about democratization of compute through containerization and container platform, data platform at scale, such like Databricks or Snowflake, all of these things make our job so easy, so that an engineer essentially see their capability multiplied by a factor 10 when you start leveraging all of these tools in the right way. And therefore, having a team really only focusing on delivering value and less about the intrinsic plumbing or all of these like mechanics, all of that is done for them, I think make the job so much simpler and so much better for them. Like really focusing on creating value and seeing the team already spending 90% of their time just generating value rather than actually doing boilerplate or infrastructure. That's really exciting. Of course, infrastructure is still there. That's why we use like our infrastructure as code. We have an entire DevOps practice to make sure that engineers are self-serve and can just be focusing on value. Yeah,
that's lovely.
That's really like exciting for me to see that happening.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's taking. I saw a quote from someone speaking about AI, and it was like AI is the great part of being able to take time away from teams so that they can focus on the things that they love to do, and that value is a big thing that comes out there. That time to focus on bringing that value to your customers and to a small business that is rapidly growing, which is great to see.
Yeah, you have you definitely have that with some application of machine learning and generative AI. But the analogy is absolutely true in the field for me, like cloud computing, data cloud platforms, DevOps, platform ops, all of these things have really accelerated the engineering craft to be really more focusing on value.
I want to look at, as we get into it a bit more, we work with a lot of CTOs at Smart OSC, and a big thing that we've had kind of spoken to us is the misconception around CTOs being purely just technical and being completely disconnected to a business strategy or to revenue growth. I'd like to ask you what you think about that misconception, and also what is one thing you wish more people would understand about this role?
I think that misconception is essentially due to the lack of understanding of tech itself and how it embeds within businesses, both enable or actually can remove value and create friction for an organization. I personally do think that the strategic importance of tech for decision making and for decision maker is paramount these days. Regardless whether tech is the product of the organization, tech is what you're selling, right? Or if tech is just an enabler for the business. The amount of projects that will either get propelled, enabled by tech, or being actually slowed down by tech, I have countless of examples where it actually can happen either way. And I do think that the role of the CTO is to bridge that gap of understanding. Like if you see like a boardroom where the level of technology is generally limited, and the CTO is here to actually bring that agenda. Say, well, here there's a potential digital asset that can be created. There's a potential differentiator, or here there's an acceleration that we could actually manipulate. Those are the risks that we are generating. That I think is what, for me, the role of the CTO is.
Yeah.
Is really to actually bridge that gap. So it can't be just technical.
Yes.
That's to be anchored in technical to make sure that the positioning of the company from a technology standpoint is sound. But none of that is possible if the board is not on board, essentially. And that happens through education, influence, conversations. That is the role of the CTO.
Yeah. And you say there, that foundation of understanding. Where does that come in? Is it storytelling for you? Is it the organization itself investing in that education for everyone? How can we get to a space where more people can have a bit more of that understanding or that fluency within an organization to be able to say that tech is everywhere for everyone, and this is how we move forward?
Well, listen, I think storytelling is definitely one of the tools the CTO can harness to get to the point. However, I personally prefer showing by example, like elevating a use case, a project or something at a small scale to see how things can be done differently. So actually bringing that to life. So maybe it's part of the storytelling, it's probably more anchored in actually a real execution, and showing like, well, this is how we can do things differently. And that I think is a great way, like demoing, showing, to actually bring progressively this topic at the center of the attention of stakeholders and decision makers.
That's beautiful as well, because it hits on every type of way that people will take in information, and it's really helping people to understand and see it come to life, which is brilliant.
But it is complex. Like a lot of the thing that we have to juggle day to day is reasonably intangible, right? Think about a project, you have a UI, a front end, but you have a whole maze of complexity, risk, project management that goes with that. And speaking about that is somewhat complex and can be a bit tedious. So again, maybe actually you're right. Maybe it's just all about storytelling.
Yeah.
That's a good point, yeah.
Thank you. Looking at then, we touched on revenue there. What challenges have you experienced with, and if you have experienced any challenges with, maybe changing the perceptions of a tech team and moving it from being a cost center to actually a revenue enabler?
So that's been always somewhat at one of the core pillar of my journey in tech. Is basically to make sure that everything I do is not considered as a cost, but as an opportunity. And that is challenging. I think that transformation needs to happen both ways, from the top and from the bottom. If you think about that as a culture shift, right? For the top, it needs to basically, as we discussed, be a better appreciation of technology as potentially a key differentiator and an asset. You have, even though, like again, if tech is not the product that you're selling, you can still actually generate lateral value through tech, like a data product, for example, some streams of commercialization of data, or through purely like operation gain, efficiency, essentially like bringing that as actually technology could be a way you transform your business. And that I think is a top transformation, like seeing tech more as an opportunity creator rather than like something boring that we have to all deal with. And as well, in parallel, infusing more of a product-led thinking, business acumen into the engineering teams so that they think more business. And that basically helps them to be more fit for purpose application and place them into more of a partnership space. So to change into technology is the only thing that we do, to technology is what we harness day to day to create value for our business. And I think that when you have the combination of those two transformations, one culturally at the board level, understanding that tech can actually be a key differentiator, and to the tech team, actually, I am in this place where I can partner more effectively with business stakeholders. I think that's where you have your sweet spot.
That is so well put, and there's so many quotes within that I just want to take and put out to the world, because it's almost, as I'm listening to that, just co-understanding each other and really building each other up on the excitement of what can happen from all sides, which is beautiful to see. And I think that's what makes Carma so special as well, is that you seem to have got that knack in line with how you operate and how you can move so quickly and grow so quickly and keep bringing that value to people. And you have been such a huge part of really exciting innovations and things that have happened at Carma. I want to know, you may have mentioned a bit of it there, but what are your keys or your car keys to success and delivering those big projects across multiple teams safely, keeping you up at night, but safely and successfully?
I wish there were like a magical recipe for that. Like that would have saved me a lot of effort and long nights, I swear. I think like every single project is unique. I don't think there's a blanket rule that makes it easy. However, there are probably like a few hygiene rules that I would recommend for people to just keep an eye out for, such as always fit for purpose engineering. As technologists, we have a tendency, that's part of the craft, to think about abstractions, to build too complex. Making sure that everything that we do is grounded in business value, making sure that we really think about that. Well, is that complexity appropriate? Is that investment appropriate? Do I have actually a return on investment for all of that tech? I think it's very, very important. I call that fit for purpose engineering, essentially, making sure that you build the right level of complexity for the right amount of value that you have, and actually what you can afford as well. Delivery management and all of that, Agile Toolbox, I think is a great way to make sure that you stay on rail by actually constantly checking back the value that you're creating and reassessing. They are more fundamental strategic investment that you need to make probably reasonably early in a project. They need for me to be really scrutinized, be like almost set aside as like a parallel stream in your project, like tech investment.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of the aspects that culturally I think is important, fit for purpose. The second, which basically I fell into many times, is the trap of estimations. Yeah, that's our sales team and stakeholders will always, for good reason, try to basically squeeze the most aggressive estimation out of the tech team that will become a commitment for the entire organization. That is a deadly trap for many reasons. The first one is stakeholders will always think a tech team is too slow. That's the very nature of that interaction. Why? Because they oversimplify tech. The way you can wrap cognitive complexity in a space which is unknown to you is to create black boxes. And for doing that, that's fantastic, that helps you to reason with complexity, but you cut out a lot of the intricacies and the integrations. And that's where the cost, the hidden cost of tech lies. So therefore, if you just think about black boxes, you actually remove all of the cost of your project. So you will hear a lot of stakeholders saying, oh, it's just a web front end, or this is just an integration.
Yeah.
But all of these things ultimately, it's just that, but that can't you just, that costs you $1 million, right? And I think that's really important to unpack that, to bring that culture. Estimation can be done, but they have to be almost, you need to follow a specific and strict guideline for that. The first one is don't oversimplify too much. The second is making sure that you create margin. So I tend to never communicate a number, but always a range. And as well, on top of that range, to convey a measure of uncertainty. Like, well, this is like within, 6 months and 8 months, but here you have a 50% uncertainty because your scope is so undefined that it may change entirely. And that ultimately, when you start having those conversations around estimations, you shift the responsibility back to the stakeholder. You have to bring them to the journey. So I think it's probably, again, back to the storytelling piece, right?
Yeah.
Those are really for me, the two main fallout that I've seen in my career is building complexity too early in a project, and as well, over-committing in terms of deadline or scope.
Yeah.
And I think early on, creating that culture where these two things are in check is very conducive of a better execution. Again, no magic recipe here. Right? Disclaimer.
Put this on the screen. Disclaimer, no magic involved. But that is so useful, and I know already that's dinging in my head that there's so many CTOs out there, even new in their journey, that will really take value from that, because it just allows you to protect yourself and protect your teams too.
Protect the business as well.
Yes, absolutely, which is so necessary too, in terms of that not over promising and under delivering as well, and making sure that everyone is on the same page and there's no surprises coming into anybody. And again, that storytelling, which is nice to refer back to.
But just maybe to take a step back, I don't set out to basically make sure that stakeholders and delivery is always aligned. I think it's very healthy to maintain that tension.
Yeah.
Very healthy to have stakeholders asking more, think faster, and the engineering team to say, well, actually we have a risk, right? And it's around creating that balance where that dialogue can eventuate. But really creating that space, because when you have that, I think that tension is very useful. It becomes toxic and potentially detrimental for the organization where one side leads the other too much.
And it goes back to that mutual understanding in a way, and that really nice level of communication, and maybe stakeholders saying something that a team may not have thought of before, and getting to be a part of each other's journey, which is lovely.
Yeah, absolutely right.
I want to go further into now yourself. I've heard you speak of a time when you went from being a business owner back to a software developer, and I thought it was really interesting and a wonderful story, and I'm wondering if you could share that with our listeners and tell us why it was so important at that time to do that.
So I'm trying to be concise here, but essentially when I set out to move to Australia, new culture, new country, I felt like I was lacking some fundamental in tech. So I work for investment banking, I work with traders, building very rapid application development, so build at scale and very rapidly systems. Then I became straight away business owner, right? And I felt like I didn't have some of the key foundationals of tech that actually were very, very important to establish the technical foundation for my career, such as managing a large code base, like a very, very large code base, or all the things that revolve around that code base, like code hygiene, code management, code review, testing, all of these things I knew were existing, and I was literate about them, but I've never really seen them in actions. And I said, okay, well, maybe actually spending the time in that space, unpacking these things by doing, is going to give me the foundation to just see what's next. And it came, I think, from a place of humility. The craft has changed a lot. There's a lot of things that I don't know. And I feel to become a legitimate leader, I need to know that. Not necessarily become an expert, right? I think like as a leader personally, my role is not to be the best in tech. My role is actually to create capability in teams better than myself. But for doing that, I think there's a layer and a set of foundational skills that you need to have to be able to coach, mentor, set strategies, to do your job well, to be able to challenge individuals as well. So that's why I decided, okay, well, let's spend a few years in a very good tech company and see what happens.
That's beautiful. It's almost like you're a facilitator for supporting people as well, just by doing that. And as you said, it's such an important thing as a leader to be able to do. If someone's in the weeds or if somebody needs help, to be able to see from their point of view or their perspective what they're working on. And it's only in taking that time to dig right into it and do the work to be able to do that when you hit up a higher position. I really like what you say there about not being an expert. And that's something that we say in design thinking. You go into a room and you open up the conversation with saying, I'm not the expert here, you are, but I'm here to facilitate and help bridge the gaps that you may be facing.
And the reality as well is, as I said, with that spectrum of tech and processes that we are dealing with and juggling with day to day, you can't be experts everywhere.
Yeah.
So anyway, you're going to develop that muscle of trusting, of active delegation with your team. So yeah, that's an interesting reflection. For me, it was really about, I think I don't know enough. I think I'm not good enough. And I don't think, therefore, I'm not going to be set up for being an effective leader.
That's great. Thank you for that. Looking at your core, what would you say is the source code for you? What are your core principles? What are the things that drive you?
I really think that throughout my career, there's been like two pivotal enabler that I think actually probably really tied to values, is around caring for people and storytelling. Right? Those two things are actually foundational for me. The care for people is grounded in my upbringing, my political background as well. I always have that in mind, that I'm going to forget projects, but I'm not going to forget people with whom I build those things, essentially. And keeping that always in perspective, that actually people somehow come first, I think has been a very good catalyst to build solid teams and deliver strong results. Actually, it doesn't have to be one or the other. One can be the enabler of the other. And the other is, I really think that tech sometimes need that voice, that translation layer. Tech needs to be inspiring, can be exciting as well. Even though I'm not the best engineer in the world, I think that when I see code being built and project being built, I think there's some sort of beauty there. And I think being able to convey that passion to stakeholders, I think as well can be, as we discussed, can be conducive of great results at an organization level.
Love that. And looking to the future now, is there any piece of advice that you'd like to give to your future self?
Yeah, I feel like almost cocky to say that, but I think for me, like essentially, kindness always wins. It doesn't really matter the business objectives. You never actually lose by trying to be kind with yourself and others. You never lose, actually. You don't necessarily gain anything, but you never lose either, and so much easier as well. So that's probably a core principle I try to implement every day, and I'd love the future for me to keep true with.
With that, I think that's a beautiful way to end things here. Florian, thank you so much for joining us on Cut the Onion. It has been wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Aziza. That was great. Thank you.